Right now, in the silent space between this breath and the next one, something is listening to you that you have never once been formally introduced to. It already knows the names of the people who will walk into your life this year. It already knows which version of you is quietly preparing to collapse and which version is preparing to rise. And the genuinely unsettling part, the part most people spend their entire lives carefully avoiding, is that this presence has been making decisions on your behalf for decades while you sincerely believed you were the one holding the wheel the entire time. There is a layer of you that operates far beneath thought, beneath language, beneath the small anxious voice you have learned to call your mind, and that deeper layer is connected to absolutely everything around you. Not in a vague, comforting, poetic way that you nod along to and then forget by the next morning. In a measurable, physical, repeatable, undeniable way that the most serious scientists alive have spent more than a century trying to explain away and have completely failed to dismiss. They eventually gave the mechanism a name. They call it entanglement. And once you truly understand what that single word points to, you will never again be able to pretend that your inner state is a private matter, that the fear you feel stays safely locked inside your own skull, or that the life currently surrounding you is some random accident you simply have to accept and endure forever. You have felt this connection before, more times than you have ever allowed yourself to count. You thought of someone you had not spoken to in months, and within moments the phone lit up with their exact name. You walked into a room and your entire body changed before a single word had been spoken aloud. You sensed, from miles away, that something was deeply wrong with a person you love, and later you discovered you had been right the entire time. The loud and frightened world taught you to file these moments under the word coincidence and to move on quickly without ever examining them, because a frightened mind is an obedient mind, and a person who has been convinced that everything is random is a person who can be quietly steered for the rest of their natural life. But you were never random. You were entangled the whole time, and somewhere underneath all of the noise, a part of you has always quietly known it. Before we travel a single step further into this, I want you to do one small thing that will completely change how everything else lands inside your body. Take one slow breath, all the way down past your chest, and as you release it, give yourself full permission to actually consider that the story you were handed about who you are and how reality truly works might have been incomplete from the very beginning. Because what I am about to walk you through is not motivation, and it is not a soft fantasy designed to make you feel a little better for one afternoon and then quietly fade. It is the living architecture underneath your entire experience, the hidden thing that has been silently shaping your money, your relationships, your health, and your private sense of what is even possible for someone like you, long before you ever had the language to question any of it. And if any part of what I just described made something tighten or soften somewhere inside your chest, understand clearly that the recognition is not an accident either. That is the deeper layer of you waking up and beginning to listen at last, after all of this time spent believing you were completely alone in here. If you can already feel that this is going to be different from the noise you usually scroll straight past, then do this one quiet thing for yourself before we continue. Gently subscribe to this channel so the rest of this unfolding can actually find its way back to you, because what comes across the next several minutes is meant to be received slowly, in careful order, the way a key only turns when every single cut along its edge has been shaped in the correct sequence. Stay with me, keep breathing, and let your guard come down just enough to feel what your busy mind has never given you the stillness to notice. The presence that has been listening to you your entire life is about to be fully explained, and once it is, the way you understand your own existence quietly begins to rearrange itself into something far larger, far stranger, and far more genuinely yours than anything you were ever taught to believe could possibly be real for a person living an ordinary human life like the one you are living right now. None of this asks you to believe anything on faith, and that is exactly what makes it so disarming once it settles in. You only have to stay honest with your own experience, because the evidence has been moving through your life this entire time, disguised as the ordinary, waiting for the moment you would finally be still enough to recognize it. Let me show you what entanglement actually is, because the precise moment it truly clicks inside you, your entire sense of what is possible begins to dissolve and quietly reform into something much larger than the small life you were trained to expect. In the deepest, most fundamental layer of physics, two particles can become so completely linked that they genuinely stop behaving like two separate things at all. You can take one of them and leave it resting here, and carry the other one all the way to the far side of the planet, and the very instant you affect the first one, the second one responds. Not a second later. Not after some signal has time to travel across the distance between them. Instantly, as though distance itself were merely a story we have all agreed to tell each other rather than a hard law we are forced to live underneath. The greatest scientific minds of the last century could not bring themselves to accept this, because it shattered the comfortable assumption that two things must physically touch in order to influence one another. The most famous physicist who ever lived was so disturbed by it that he spent years insisting it simply had to be wrong, that something essential must be missing from the picture, that reality could not possibly behave this way. And every single carefully designed experiment that followed kept whispering the very same impossible truth back to him, again and again, with a patience that eventually wore the doubt down to nothing. The connection is real. The separation is the illusion. Today this is no longer some fringe controversy argued about in dusty lecture halls. It is one of the most thoroughly verified phenomena in all of modern science, so solid and so dependable that engineers now use it to build the quantum computers and the unbreakable encryption systems that are beginning to reshape the world you live in. So hold that established fact gently in your chest for a moment, because here is the part that almost nobody pauses long enough to truly absorb. You are made of those very same particles. Every cell, every nerve, every flicker of emotion that moves through your body, every thought that rises and falls inside your mind, is built from the exact same fabric of reality that flatly refuses to be separated across distance. So if connection without distance is the genuine foundation of matter itself, the bedrock beneath everything physical, then what exactly do you imagine you are when you feel inexplicably pulled toward a certain place, a certain person, a certain path that no logic in your mind can adequately justify or explain? You are not malfunctioning in those moments. You are not being foolish or naive or superstitious, no matter how many times the world has trained you to dismiss yourself for feeling them. You are briefly perceiving the deeper layer of how reality is actually stitched together underneath the surface of ordinary appearances. And I want you to sit with how enormous that really is, because it means the strange pulls and the quiet knowings you have spent your life apologizing for were never errors in your wiring. They were accurate readings of a connected universe that the everyday mind is simply too narrow and too distracted to register on its own. If this is the first time anyone has framed it for you in a way that does not insult your intelligence or ask you to abandon your reason, then take a quiet second and save this video somewhere you will find it again, because the mind is slippery and it will try to talk you out of this understanding the moment life gets loud and ordinary again. You will want to return to this exact point, to this exact realization, when the old story tries to reassert itself and convince you that you are small and separate and powerless after all. Because what we have just established together is not a belief and it is not a hope. It is a fact, demonstrated over and over, that the most basic units of everything you are made of remain connected in ways that distance and time cannot touch. And if that is true of the particles, and you are nothing but an unfathomably vast and intricate arrangement of those particles held together in the shape of a living human being, then the obvious and inescapable question becomes the one almost no one has the courage to actually ask out loud. What, then, are you truly connected to right now, in this very moment, without your awareness or your consent? Stay close, because the answer to that question is where everything we are building begins to turn from fascinating physics into the most personal and practical thing you will ever understand about your own life and the invisible forces that have been shaping it from the day you were born into this world. And once you feel the weight of that question land, the comfortable idea that you are a closed and separate self, sealed off from everyone and everything, quietly loses the grip it has held on you for so long. Picture the whole of humanity as a single vast ocean, and every single conscious being alive as one drop of water held within it, never once truly separate from the water surrounding it on every side. In that ocean there are powerful currents moving constantly beneath the surface, and most people get carried by them their entire lives without ever realizing the water is even moving. Fear is a current. Scarcity is a current. Panic, urgency, resentment, the gnawing certainty that there will never be enough, these all move through the collective like cold and relentless rivers running far below the visible surface, and people get swept helplessly into them without ever once choosing to enter. This is not a pretty metaphor I am reaching for to make a point. This is something researchers can actually measure in a laboratory. Human nervous systems synchronize with one another. Put a group of bodies together in the same room for long enough and their heart rhythms quietly begin to align, their breathing slowly falls into a shared pattern, and their stress rises and falls together like a row of instruments unconsciously tuning themselves to a single invisible note. You already know this truth in your skin, even if no one ever named it for you. You know the particular person who drains every drop of energy out of you the very moment they walk through the door, and you know the rare person whose simple presence settles your entire body like warm light pouring through still water. That is entanglement made visible in your daily life, and you have been feeling it accurately the whole time. Emotional contagion is a documented and accepted phenomenon. A single anxious person can shift the temperature of an entire room. A frightened crowd can move as one organism. Beliefs spread between human beings faster and more efficiently than any virus ever could, leaping from nervous system to nervous system through tone, through expression, through the silent field that connects us all whether we acknowledge it or not. And here is the part that the loud and powerful forces of this world do not want you to sit with for very long, because the moment you truly grasp it, you become far harder to move around like a piece on a board. If fear is a current, and if fear spreads from person to person through entanglement, then keeping enormous numbers of people perpetually afraid is the oldest and most efficient method ever devised for keeping them small, obedient, and reactive. A frightened nervous system narrows your perception down to a pinhole. It shrinks your entire sense of what is possible down to bare survival, down to the next unpaid bill, the next looming threat. And a human being locked inside that survival state simply cannot feel the deeper, calmer, wiser intelligence that has been patiently trying to reach them their entire life from underneath the noise. They are not broken and they are not weak. They are simply entangled with the wrong current, tuned to a frequency that was, in many cases, deliberately broadcast into the ocean around them to keep them exactly where they are. Notice, right now, how much of what you carry on an ordinary day was never actually generated by you. Notice how much of your low background hum of dread arrived through the screens you stare into, the rooms you sit in, the people whose fear quietly became your fear without a single word of permission ever being asked. If even a fraction of this is landing in your body as something you have lived but never had the words for, then take one slow and deliberate breath here and let it genuinely anchor inside you, because the very next breath is precisely where your power begins its long journey back home to you. You are not the fear. You were swept into it. And anything you were swept into, you can learn to climb out of, the same way a swimmer who finally understands the shape of the current stops thrashing against the water and begins, at last, to move with real intention toward the shore. Share this with the one person you keep picturing while you listen, the one whose fear you can feel from across a city, because if they keep rising into your mind, the two of you are already entangled, and this understanding may be trying to reach them through you. That is not a coincidence either, and by the time we are finished here together, you will understand precisely why nothing in your life ever truly was. For now, simply let this realization reorganize something inside you. The heaviness you have carried, the chronic low dread that follows you from room to room, so much of it was never your authentic nature at all. It was a current you were born into and then swam inside for so long that you mistook the water for yourself. And the instant you can see the water as water, separate from the one who swims, you have already begun the quiet work of choosing a different current, which is the most threatening thing a person can learn to do. You are not trapped inside the current you happen to be born into. That is the truth they were never going to hand you, because everything changes the moment you accept it. You can leave that current. You can deliberately change what you are entangled with, in exactly the same way you would step out of a freezing river and lower yourself into still, warm water by simply choosing where to place your body. And the way you change your entanglement is not through force, not through waging war against your own mind, not through gritting your teeth and performing a feeling you do not have. You change it through the state you learn to stabilize inside your nervous system, because your inner state is a signal broadcasting outward every moment of every day whether you are aware of it or not. When your dominant inner frequency is fear, you entangle with fear, and the world around you keeps faithfully mirroring fear back to you with an almost cruel and uncanny precision. You attract the people who reenact your oldest wound. You walk straight into the very outcomes you were bracing against, and then you conclude, understandably, that life is simply hard and the world is against you. But the world was only echoing the signal you did not know you were sending. Now follow this carefully, because here is where it turns. When you slowly learn to hold a different state, when a quiet and unshakable sense of safety begins to live inside your chest even before your external circumstances have given you any logical permission to feel it, you begin to broadcast something entirely new into the field. And the field, which is endlessly responsive and utterly impersonal, has no choice but to begin reorganizing itself around the new signal. This is precisely why nervous system regulation is not a soft, optional, decorative wellness trend to squeeze in when you have a spare moment. It is the single most powerful act of creation available to a human being in a body, because the instant your inner signal stabilizes into coherence, the world stops dragging you behind it and begins arranging itself around the steadiness you have become. The calm you cultivate is not passive. It is generative, the most consequential thing you will ever do, even though from the outside it looks like you are doing nothing at all. And this is the quiet reason the work I do with the people I walk beside, the regulating, the rewiring, the patient healing of the nervous system underneath the story, is never merely self-help. It is the literal mechanism through which a person changes what they broadcast into the connected field, and therefore changes what the field sends back. The frightened world will never advertise this to you, because a regulated, awake, internally sovereign human being is almost impossible to manipulate, almost impossible to frighten into obedience. Your calm is a quiet act of rebellion against everything that profits from your fear. So if this is the kind of understanding you have been unknowingly searching for your entire life, the kind that respects your intelligence while explaining what logic alone could never reach, then subscribe and stay close to this channel, because I am taking you somewhere most people are never shown, somewhere underneath the noise where your real power has been waiting this whole time. And as you breathe here with me, let one fact settle all the way down into your bones, slowly enough that it cannot be argued away. The state you live in is not a reaction to your life. It is the cause of it. And a cause is something you are allowed to change, the moment you understand it was yours to hold all along, and that no one was ever coming to change it for you. Let me say it even more plainly, because your mind will want to make this complicated. If your nervous system has spent years rehearsing a state of bracing, of scanning for threat, of quiet contraction, then that state has become the frequency you broadcast by default, simply because it is what your body knows how to be. And a body that knows only how to brace will keep entangling you with everything that justifies the bracing, in an endless loop that feels exactly like proof that the world is unsafe. But the loop is not proof of anything except the signal you have been transmitting. The instant you introduce even a few minutes a day of genuine regulation, of an embodied safety your system can begin to memorize, you interrupt the loop at its source. You are not lying to yourself and you are not bypassing anything real. You are giving your nervous system a new baseline, and from that baseline a new set of entanglements becomes available, ones that were always there but could never reach you while you were tuned to dread. This is the entire game underneath the game. Not forcing the world to change while you stay the same frightened frequency, but becoming a different frequency so completely that the world has no choice but to answer. Let me make all of this undeniably real with something that has already happened to you, because it has happened to every single person who has ever lived inside a human body. You are doing something completely ordinary. You are washing a dish, or driving a road you have driven 1,000 times, or lying in the dark in the last minutes before sleep takes you. And without any warning and without any reason attached to it, a particular person rises up into your mind. Not a person you were planning to think about. Not someone connected to whatever you were doing. They simply appear in your awareness, fully formed, as if they walked in through a door you did not know was open. And then, sometimes within minutes, they appear in your actual life. A message arrives. The phone rings with their name. You turn a corner and there they are, in the flesh, in a city of millions. And your rational mind immediately scrambles to file the whole thing under coincidence, because coincidence is comfortable, and comfort allows you to keep your old, small, manageable picture of reality completely intact. But let me tell you what is actually occurring underneath, in the layer where the real machinery turns. Your thought of that person was never a tiny electrical spark trapped inside the bone of your skull. Thought is not contained. Thought is vibration, and vibration moves through the field that connects all things. When you think deeply of someone, you tune yourself to their unique frequency signature, the way a radio dial finds a station that was already broadcasting long before you turned the knob. And the event that looks like two separate things, you thinking of them and then them appearing, is in deeper truth one connection expressing itself across what only seems, from inside time, like distance and delay. You did not cause the phone call. You did not summon them out of nothing. What you did was notice a coordination already unfolding in a layer of reality where separation does not exist and where past and future are not the rigid conveyor belt your mind insists they must be. They had already made the choices that would bring them toward you before the thought ever surfaced. The connection happened outside of time, then expressed itself inside time as two related events your mind, trapped in sequence, struggles to explain. And if that is true even once, and you know it has been true many times, then the whole foundation of how you have understood your existence begins to tremble. Because it means you are not a sealed, separate passenger drifting through a cold and random world. It means you are tuned, constantly, to frequencies, and your life is the song those frequencies play back to you. The synchronicities you dismissed were never noise. They were brief glimpses of the connected fabric underneath everything, breaking through just long enough for you to catch sight of it before the ordinary mind rushed in to explain it away. Save this video right now, before your thinking mind talks you out of what you can feel is true, because you're going to want to return to this exact understanding later this week, in the moment your old conditioning tries to convince you again that you are small and powerless and alone, that the strange knowings meant nothing, that you should simply lower your eyes and accept the narrow life you were assigned. And here is the part that turns this from a curiosity into something that touches every corner of your life. If a single thought of a person can tune you to them across distance and time, then what do you imagine your most repeated thoughts are tuning you to, year after year? Because the thought you think once and forget is a faint and passing signal. But the thought you think 10,000 times, the belief you rehearse before your feet even touch the floor, the quiet verdict you have broadcast about your worth and your future since you were a child, that is not faint at all. That is a stable, dominant frequency, and the field has been tuning you to its match for as long as you have transmitted it. This is why the same kinds of people keep appearing wearing different faces. This is why the same situations keep finding you no matter how far you move. You were never cursed and you were never unlucky. You were entangled, through the sheer repetition of your inner signal, with a particular stream of reality, and that stream kept delivering exactly what you were tuned to receive. The synchronicity of thinking about an old friend and watching them call is simply the small, harmless, visible version of a mechanism that has been quietly running the largest patterns of your entire life from underneath your awareness. Once you truly see that, you cannot unsee it, and you will never again read the repeating patterns of your life as random misfortune. You will recognize them, correctly, as feedback, as the field showing you with perfect honesty what you have been broadcasting all along. Now I want to take you deeper than the physics alone will ever go, into the layer where I actually work with the people I am honored to guide. I want you to imagine that reality is not one single fixed stream that everyone is forced to share. Imagine instead that it is countless streams running side by side, each one a slightly or radically different version of a life, all of them real, all of them available, all of them flowing at once. There is a stream where struggle is your constant companion, where effort never compounds into anything lasting no matter how hard you push. There is a stream where you are surrounded by people who cannot quite see you, who take more than they give. There is a stream where anxiety is the low hum beneath every morning, where you wake already braced before the day has begun. And running right beside those, close enough to touch, there are entirely different ones. There is a stream where support arrives before you know how to ask for it. There is a stream where exactly the right person appears at exactly the moment you have become ready to receive them. There is a stream where abundance moves steadily toward you, not because you chased it and exhausted yourself pursuing it, but because you finally stopped broadcasting the low-frequency fear of its absence. Here is the truth that took me years to fully understand and even longer to learn how to live. You are not stuck in your current stream because it is the deep and final truth of who you really are. You are in it because of what you have been entangled with up until this exact moment. The beliefs you inherited from people who were themselves afraid. The emotional baseline your nervous system memorized in childhood, before you had any say. The automatic reactions that fire faster than conscious thought can catch them. Those are the coordinates, and those coordinates are what tune you to one specific version of reality out of the countless versions quietly running all around you. And the single most liberating sentence I am able to offer you in this entire conversation is this. You are allowed to change the coordinates. Not through magic, not through delusion, not through pretending the painful things are not painful, but through frequency, through the patient work of becoming someone tuned to a different stream entirely. The version of your life where you are supported and met by the right people at the right time is not a fantasy you must earn through suffering. It already exists, running parallel to the one you stand in, separated from you not by distance and not by luck but only by the frequency you have been holding. If this is speaking to something you have felt in your bones your entire life but never once had the language to name, then leave a comment below and tell me exactly where in your body you feel it as you listen, because the simple act of naming what you feel is part of how you begin to loosen its grip on you and open the space for something new to enter. I read these comments, and every time one of you names the thing out loud, you make it a little more possible for the next person to recognize it in themselves. You are not confessing a weakness. You are stabilizing a new signal in front of witnesses, which is one of the oldest ways a human being has ever changed the direction of a life. Let me slow down on one piece of this, because it is the piece that most people miss and it is the piece that changes everything. When I say these streams are running side by side, I do not mean they are far away, waiting for you at the end of some long and punishing road of self-improvement. I mean they are here, now, overlapping the exact space you occupy in this moment. The version of you that feels safe with money and the version that feels terror checking your account are not separated by years. They are separated by frequency, by the state your nervous system is holding right now as you breathe. This is why two people can stand in nearly identical circumstances, the same income, the same history, and live in two completely different worlds. One is entangled with scarcity and meets it everywhere. The other is entangled with sufficiency and somehow the resources, the people, the openings keep finding their way. It was never about the circumstances. It was always about the stream they were tuned to, the frequency they had stabilized so deeply that it had become invisible to them, as natural and unquestioned as the air. And the reason this matters so much for you, right now, is that it means you are never more than one stabilized state away from a different stream. Not one lucky break away. Not one more decade of grinding away. One genuine, embodied shift in the frequency you hold, sustained long enough for the field to reorganize around it. That is the entire distance between the life you are living and the life running quietly parallel to it. It feels enormous only because no one taught you the doorway was internal. So let me hand you something you can actually hold in your hands, a practice simple enough to begin the moment this video ends and powerful enough to slowly bend the entire direction of your life if you have the patience to stay with it. For the next stretch of your life, choose just one single area where you feel most stuck, the one that carries the heaviest charge when you even think about it. It might be money. It might be love. It might be your health, your body, your sense of purpose. Pick the one that makes something tighten in you right now, because that tightening is the signal pointing you toward exactly where the work wants to happen. And instead of frantically trying to fix the circumstance from the outside, you are going to do something almost no one is willing to do. You are going to become a quiet, honest witness to the thoughts and reactions that rise inside you in that one area. Write them down. Every recurring fear. Every always and every never. Every silent verdict you have handed your own life without putting it on trial. Things like this never works out for me, or I always end up alone, or money is just hard for people like me, or it is too late and I have missed my chance. These are not innocent passing thoughts. They are frequencies, stable and repeating, and they have been holding you in place for years, broadcasting the coordinates of the exact stream you keep wishing you could escape. Then, for each one, you ask a single surgical question that begins to dismantle it from the inside. If this thought is locking me into the reality I do not want, what is the thought that would tune me to the one I actually want? And then you define that new thought deliberately, with care. You are not lying to yourself. You are not slapping forced positivity over a wound that needs tending. You are opening a door that fear had convinced you was a solid wall. The thought I can never get ahead becomes something truer and larger, like life is arranging things on my behalf even in the places I cannot yet see. The thought people always leave me becomes I am learning to recognize and receive the ones who are meant to stay. The thought it is too late for me becomes I am exactly where I need to be for the next thing trying to reach me. You are not deluding yourself with any of this. You are choosing, on purpose, which frequency you will stabilize and broadcast, instead of letting the old inherited fear keep choosing for you on autopilot, the way it has your whole life. This is the moment you take the pen back, the moment you stop being written and start writing. And if you can feel even the faintest movement inside you right now, the smallest part of you leaning toward the version of your life that has been waiting for you to turn and face it, then like this video, because that reaching is itself the beginning of the signal changing. The like is not for me. It is a small physical act that tells your own nervous system you are serious, that you are no longer just drifting but actively choosing, and your body registers that choice far more than your thinking mind will admit. You do not need anyone to believe it with you yet. You only need to begin, in this one area, with this one honest list, with this one new thought you are brave enough to define and brave enough to feel. Let me prepare you for what happens next, because if I do not, your old conditioning will sabotage you in a way that feels completely reasonable. The first time you define a new thought and try to hold it, a part of you will rise up and call it a lie. It will say, who are you to believe that? Look at your past, look at every time it did not work out. And here is what you must understand in that moment, because it is the hinge the practice turns on. That voice is not the truth. It is the old frequency defending its territory, because frequencies, like everything alive, fight to survive. The scarcity stream does not want to lose you. The story of not enough has run you for so long that it experiences your attempt to change as a threat to its existence, and it will throw every familiar argument at you to pull you back into the current it knows. Your only job in that moment is to recognize the resistance for what it is, not proof that the new thought is false, but proof that you have touched the edge of the pattern holding you. The resistance is not the wall. The resistance is the doorway announcing itself. And every time you feel that old voice rise and you gently, without fighting it, return to the new thought anyway, you weaken the grip of the old stream and strengthen the new one. This is not a single dramatic act. It is a quiet accumulation, 1,000 small returns to the frequency you are choosing, until one ordinary day you notice the new thought has become your default, arising on its own, and the old one has gone quiet, and somewhere along the way your outer life began to rearrange itself around the person you had patiently become. So let us bring this all the way home, because what you do with the next few minutes matters more than you yet realize. We began with a strange and beautiful truth from the deepest layer of physics, that two things can remain connected across any distance, that the instant you affect one the other responds, and that separation, the thing we built our lives around, is in the end the real illusion. We did not leave it sitting safely in a laboratory. We followed the thread out of the equations and into the center of your own ordinary life. You are not an isolated drop, sealed off and alone. You are an ocean briefly convinced it is a drop. The fear you have carried for years is often not even yours, it is a current you were swept into before you could choose, and you are allowed, right now, to climb out. Your inner state was never private. It is a broadcast, shaping the field around you every moment, calling toward you the people, situations, and outcomes that match the frequency you hold. And your present circumstances, which you may have mistaken for a final verdict on who you are nothing of the kind. They are simply the stream you have been entangled with until now, and streams can be changed by anyone willing to change their frequency and hold it long enough for reality to catch up. If you remember nothing else from everything we moved through today, remember this one thing, because it is the key the whole door turns on. You are not stuck in one version of your life. You are tuned to one, and the channel can be changed. That is not magic and it is not spiritual fantasy. It is the quiet, precise mechanics of a universe far more connected, far more responsive, and far more on your side than you were ever taught to believe. Now here is what I am asking of you, because this message only does its work if it moves. If anything here reached something real inside you, leave a comment and tell me the one thought you are choosing to recode, the frequency you are ready to release, because naming it out loud is how you begin to break its hold, and your words may be the exact thing that frees the next person who reads them. Then share this with the one person who keeps surfacing in your mind, because if they kept appearing, the two of you are already entangled, and this may be the message trying to reach them through you. Save this video somewhere you will find it again, because your old conditioning will return, it always does, and you will want to come back to this exact understanding and remember who you are underneath the fear. Like it, so your nervous system registers that you are choosing rather than drifting, and so this reaches more of the people who have waited their whole lives for someone to explain it this way. And subscribe, and stay, because we are only at the beginning of this work, and what comes next goes far deeper. Thank you for staying to the end, for letting your guard down just enough to feel what is true. The field is always listening to the signal you send. And from this moment forward, now that you understand how all of it actually works, so are you. The version of your life that has been waiting for you, running parallel to this one, is not far away at the end of a punishing road. It is one stabilized frequency away, one steady breath away, one honest choice away, and you are the only one who was ever able to make it. So make it. Begin today, begin small, begin imperfectly, but begin, because the moment you change what you are entangled with, everything entangled with you begins, quietly and certainly, to change as well. I will see you in the next one, and until then, stay tuned to the frequency of the life you actually came here to live, because it has been waiting for you to remember it was yours all along. Let me leave you with one last image, because the mind remembers pictures long after it forgets words. Imagine that everything you have ever wanted, the peace, the security, the love, the meaningful work, is not waiting in some distant future you must earn through years of struggle. Imagine instead that it stands in a room right beside this one, separated by a single wall made entirely of the frequency you have been holding. Not concrete. Not steel. Just a frequency, just a state, just the weight of everything you were taught was possible for someone like you. And a frequency is the one wall that dissolves the instant you stop feeding it and broadcast something else. You do not have to break it down with force or fight it for years. You simply become, more and more often, the version of you that lives in the other room, until one day you realize you are already standing in it and the wall was never real. That is the whole teaching. You were never trapped. You were only tuned to the wrong station, holding the dial without knowing your hand was on it. Now you know. And knowing it in your body, not just your mind, is the beginning of the end of every cage you were ever placed inside.